Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. All right, it's a hot button issue because it's Canada. We're talking about our two official languages, and specifically the case of our Governor General Mary Simon, who's the first Indigenous Governor General that we've ever had, and the one knock on her, as far as I could tell, is her complete lack of knowledge in French. That being said, she has apparently, if the documents are correct, she has worked very hard to improve her French to the tune of hundreds of hours of one-on-one French lessons. The problem is it hasn't necessarily resulted in a market improvement in her French. And it opens up a larger conversation about bilingualism in the civil service. And I know personally, because I do some French radio with a gentleman by the name of Benoit Dutrisac, who is no fan of Mary Simon. And I think a big chunk of that comes from her seeming unwillingness to learn French. But I'll ask you, Dimitri, it doesn't feel like it's an unwillingness. It feels like learning a third language to her is just a hard hill for her to climb. She's putting in the time.
I'd like to be an astronaut, but I hope they don't send me to space before I get the adequate training and demonstrate that I can actually be an astronaut. And here's the argument here. Whether we like it or not, Canada has two official languages, French and English. Two founding people, the French and the English. The founding language of Canada is actually French. 1608, Samuel de Champlain landed on the shores of the St. Lawrence. So my point is the following. She should have never been appointed head of state or representative of the head of state and commander-in-chief because she does not speak the two official languages of this country. Whether we like it or not, whether you want to be governor general or prime minister, you need to be able to communicate in English and French, not English or French, French or English. 3/4 of Canadians speak English, roughly 75%, and more than 30% of Canadians speak both English and just French. So it's a bad appointment, should have never happened, and I don't think taxpayers should be paying for Mary Simon to learn French. She should have learned French. She was a senior public servant. She should have learned French decades ago, and she should have been disqualified from the get-go at ever becoming Governor General of Canada.
Max, what's the sense that you have a little farther west?
Yeah, it's not as hot of a button out here. Although Alberta has a pretty significant francophone minority here.
How would Alberta react if a unilingual francophone was named Governor General?
Nope, they would be appalled. I mean, I think your points are well made, and I take them. That this job and the job of Prime Minister, table stakes is speaking at least those two official languages. I think it is admirable to want to find someone who also speaks Indigenous languages so they can communicate with those people in our country. But there are plenty of people who can speak both English, French, and an Indigenous language, and that should have been the circle in which the appointment was drawn from. I think there is an interesting sort of silver lining around the horizon here, which is that we have technology now with artificial intelligence and there's these new AirPods that do translation for people, that this is going to become, I think, a slightly less pressing issue. I still think you're going to need to speak English and French if you want to be Prime Minister, Governor General. Stephen Harper showed that you can learn French. It's hard, but you can learn it. But for most civil servants, I just think this is going to become less of a hot button, given that we'll have technologies that close the distance between non-native English speakers and non-native French speakers.
Dimitri, how do you see that then from the perspective of Quebec, where if what Max says comes to pass, the civil service could be occupied by people who either speak English or French, not necessarily both, because we're going to have technology that complements them in real time and allows them to service any Canadian in any language. I mean, heck, we're going to be able to do it in any language under the sun. Never mind English or French. And you won't have to speak them. You'll have an AI assistant who will help. But the question is it the goal of the public service to hire bilingual Canadians, or is it the goal of the public service to service Canadians in either English or French as they choose? Because those are two different things.
So they are two very different things, and I'm glad you made the distinction, Ben. So when it comes to servicing Canadians, Canadians should be serviced in either French or English, our two official languages, their language of preference. Number two, if we are simply going to use artificial intelligence as the backup plan for everything, we may as well just have monkeys on a typewriter, and they can press on buttons, and artificial intelligence can run the federal public service. My point on language is the following: whether it's a francophone learning to speak English or an anglophone learning to speak French, it is not just a language. It is the ability to understand, to engage, and to appreciate. We are such a diverse nation. You compare the West Coast, British Columbia, Alberta, to the East Coast, Atlantic Canada, Quebec, and obviously here in Ontario. The ability to speak to somebody in English, if you're a francophone, allows you to also understand them, allows you to build bridges with these people. The ability to do the opposite, an anglophone speaking French, because at the end of the day, it goes well beyond linguistic skills. It goes to understanding priorities. For example, today, Premier Smith is in Montreal delivering a speech to the business community. So senior public servants and senior federal government officials, be it deputy ministers or ministers, they should learn both official languages. It is beyond just a linguistic issue, because ultimately, let's just replace cabinet with artificial intelligence too. We might get more bang for our buck through that as well. Artificial intelligence cannot be the solution to everything. It needs to be real human intelligence.
Max, what do you think? Because look, I think there's a role for artificial intelligence, and I don't discount what Dimitri is saying. But there is a cost. So listen, it cost us $52,000 to try to teach Mary Simon French, and that didn't work. Now there's a push in the civil service to offer French language classes to Anglophones and vice versa. I mean, it's expensive and it's not necessarily optimal. And perhaps there is a role for AI to play. But I take Dimitri's point.
I'm just surprised that he's looking past such a easy opportunity to save money in the federal public service. I think he's making a bit of a slippery slope argument. I'm certainly not suggesting that AI should do everything. I am equal parts intrigued and horrified by AI. But I think in this particular case, whether it's Duolingo, whether it's AI doing translation, there is a lower cost, higher tech way to get people to communicate with each other than doing, immersion opportunities in Vancouver and Quebec City, where, oh, by the way, they can also do tourism at the same time. I just think there is an opportunity here to reduce the salience of this divide between us, and find ways to communicate better with each other. And to me, that is the end goal. We have to be able to communicate and understand other people in this country, because it's not just a French-English divide anymore. We have dozens of divides in this country, and we have to be attentive, I think, to all of them.
I'm going to get back, Dimitri. Yeah, last point for you, but and I'll ask you to do this very quickly. But surely there's a difference between a need to understand each other and a need to simply provide a service. I mean, isn't there a nuance there? And you've got about 30 seconds, my friend.
I'll do it in 15, and I'll tell you this. Ben, you spent a good chunk of your life in Ottawa. I spent more than a decade. I can tell you two things. You can be in a room with 20 francophones and one anglophone in Ottawa, and the meeting will happen in English. And number two, having spent more than a decade in Ottawa, there are two official languages in Ottawa: English and simultaneous translation.
Yeah. All right. All fair points to the both of you. I say another great chat. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.